The most powerful man in the world sat alone in a military tent on a cold frontier, writing a private notebook, reminding himself again and again not to lose his temper, not to seek approval, not to waste the one life he had. He was the Emperor of Rome, and he wrote to himself like a student who kept failing the same lesson. This is Saga Thinks. Let's open his notebook. The single most important idea running through meditations is what's sometimes called the dichotomy of control. Some things are within your power, and some things are not. And almost all human suffering comes from confusing the two. What's within your power? Your judgments, your intentions, your responses, your own choices. What's not within your power? Other people's opinions of you, your reputation, your health, whether your empire is hit by plague, whether the barbarians attack this winter, whether you live or die. Marcus returns to this constantly, almost obsessively, because he needs it constantly. He writes to himself that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This isn't passive resignation. Marcus isn't telling himself not to act. He spent years actively commanding armies and administering an empire. The point is narrower and more precise. Act fully in the domain that's actually yours, your effort, your character, your choices. And stop wasting emotional energy on outcomes you were never going to control anyway. He needed this idea more than most. His reign was hit by devastating plague, endless war on the frontier, and the deaths of several of his own children in infancy. This wasn't philosophy for a comfortable life. It was a survival tool for an extremely difficult one. Meditations returns again and again to death, not morbidly, but as a clarifying tool. Marcus reminds himself constantly that he could leave life right now, and that this thought should shape how he acts, thinks, and feels in every moment. This is the Stoic practice historians now call Memento Mori. Remember, you will die. For Marcus, it's not despair. It's the opposite, a technique for cutting through trivial anxieties by holding them up against the one certainty that makes them look small. Worried what a colleague thinks of you? You'll both be dust soon. Anxious about a setback that feels enormous today? In the context of a mortal life, how much does it actually matter? He also uses a related idea, that we only ever lose the present moment, because that's the only thing we ever actually possess. The longest life and the shortest life, in the end, lose the exact same thing, the sliver of time called now. This reframes urgency. You don't need infinite time to live well. You need to use the time you actually have, today, with full attention. There's something almost startlingly modern in this. Long before mindfulness became a wellness industry buzzword, Marcus was writing private reminders to himself to stay rooted in the present, because the present is the only place life actually happens. One of Marcus's favorite mental exercises is what scholars now call the view from above. Imagining yourself rising up, seeing your city, your problems, your entire life from a great height, then further out, seeing the whole earth as one small point in an immense cosmos. He uses this technique to shrink his anxieties down to scale. Whatever is troubling him, political intrigue, a personal insult, the exhausting demands of ruling, becomes almost comically small when viewed from the perspective of the vastness of time and space. It's not that the problem doesn't matter. It's that most problems matter far less than our anxious minds insist they do in the moment. But Marcus pairs this cosmic smallness with a strong sense of social duty, a very stoic combination that surprises people who assume stoicism means detached indifference. He repeatedly reminds himself that he was not made for himself alone, and that as a social being, cooperating with others is part of his very nature, as natural as a hand or a foot, working for the good of the whole body. This is crucial to understanding Marcus correctly. His philosophy isn't an excuse for withdrawal or apathy. It's the opposite. Because external outcomes don't ultimately matter, you're free to act for the common good without needing your ego validated by the result. Do the right thing because it's right, not because you expect thanks, credit, or a particular outcome. Meditations has quietly become one of the most read philosophy books of the last 2 decades, cited by athletes, CEOs, and therapists alike, mostly because its core insight scales down perfectly to ordinary anxieties. Stuck in traffic? Someone criticized you online? A project didn't go the way you wanted? The dichotomy of control applies just as cleanly to a delayed flight as it did to a Germanic invasion. Modern cognitive behavioral therapy, in fact, has documented roots partly traceable back to Stoic thinking. The core CBT idea that it's not events themselves, but our judgments about events that cause our distress is almost a direct restatement of this text. The deeper lesson, though, is less about specific techniques and more about the practice itself. Marcus wasn't a finished Stoic sage. He was a flawed, exhausted, grieving man who had to talk himself through the same lessons over and over in writing, because philosophy isn't something you master once. It's a discipline you return to daily. A quick note on the man himself. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire from 161 to 180 AD. Meditations wasn't written for publication. It was a private journal, likely composed in fragments during military campaigns, written in Greek as an ongoing conversation with himself. It survived by accident, copied for centuries, until it resurfaced in the Renaissance. He was trained in Stoicism, a philosophy already 400 years old by his time. He didn't invent it, but we get to watch the most powerful man in the world actually trying, in real time, imperfectly, to live it. What makes meditations endure isn't that Marcus Aurelius achieved perfect equanimity. It's that he didn't, and he wrote down the struggle honestly, for no one but himself. Nearly 2,000 years later, that honesty is exactly why it still works. It's not a lecture from a man who has it all figured out. It's a fellow struggler's notebook, and we're allowed to read over his shoulder. If you found this useful, subscribe to Saga Thinks for more deep dives into philosophy's essential texts. Next, Epictetus, the former slave whose blunt, practical teachings shaped Marcus Aurelius himself